fast lane when I pass in the street. Bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle.
What's going on, everybody? Your man Eric Wilson in for the Sports Arena on a Monday night, back from the NFL Combine, Indianapolis, Indiana. Let me just say, when you talk about talent, truly, this is why only about 300 young men get invited to this event, because we truly saw, in my opinion, some of the best that were here in Indianapolis for the 2025 NFL Scouting Combine. So, I mean, there's so much to dive into, so much to talk about. I want to go through some of the gentlemen that I did mention while I was there, and some who I may have forgotten to bring up to you guys, especially the group on Saturday, which is, as we know, the prime time, if you will. It is the quarterbacks, the wide receivers, and, of course, the running backs. Now, listen, we knew the big names, Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward. They weren't going to do much. They were here for media, interviews, but they are waiting for their pro day, as I like to say, show up and show out. But for these other gentlemen, and let's start on Thursday with the defensive linemen. When I tell you that I was slightly in awe of what I saw, because I knew what to expect. But these gentlemen truly elevated their stock. And I will not be surprised if come April in Green Bay at the 2025 NFL Draft, I will not be surprised if some of the names that I mentioned here tonight are guys that we hear going within the first 3 rounds of the draft. Now, again, just as a reminder, some of the gentlemen that I did speak on, Derek Harmon out of Oregon. This young man had a 4.95 40, excelled in his drills, particularly in the wave drill, as well as the 4-bag agility. You have other gentlemen such as Aeneas Pebbles from Virginia Tech. You have a Ty Robinson from Nebraska. Again, 4.83 40. Now, these are defensive linemen who excelled at the pass rush drill. Tim Smith out of Alabama. Now, I know people are saying Alabama, it's kind of what we expect, that we know some of the best come from Roll Tide, Alabama. However, I will say that over the last probably 2 years, we've begun to see a bit of a shift with regard to who is the quote-unquote top dog in college football. And I truly believe the Big Ten, yes, I'm saying this somewhat biased, they are making a statement as to who the top dog is. CJ West out of Indiana, 4.95 40, great in the pass rush, great in the wave drill. The gentleman who I was concerned about, and I was excited to see, however, he did not perform at the Combine, Abdul Carter from Penn State, a gentleman who is highly touted to be arguably the first defensive player off the board, even though he's not having surgery on that foot. He didn't perform. So let's see what happens on his pro day if he actually does show up. Again, the guy that I told all of you guys about Friday morning when I'm outside Lucas Oil, James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee. Ran a 4.5. Again, these times were unofficial. You can go to NFL Combine and get the actual time to see what they did make his time to be. But sitting in the stands at Lucas Oil and watching these young men perform, James Pierce Jr., the guy from Tennessee, 4.5 on his first run, 4.47 on his second run. And again, just had the wherewithal to show that not only is he coachable, he's adaptable, but I think this young man, in my opinion, projected first round pick. Thursday night, we're going to be hearing James Pierce Jr.'s name go to a team. I was joking with some of the people, like, it would be something if yet again the general manager, Howie Roseman of the Philadelphia Eagles, was to secure a James Pierce Jr. at a Tennessee. I'm sure everybody would be throwing their hands and everything else up in the air, like, how did Howie do it again? Time will tell. With the linebackers, you had young men in there who were just truly, they saw what was happening. The bar was there. So you had guys who were just showing up and making sure that their name was a name that people were going to remember. I was just very, very impressed by what I saw on night one. Now, I had a conversation with a young lady by the name of Lindsay Rhodes from Sumer Sports. I had the privilege of meeting her at the Super Bowl, and we were having a conversation just about how the analytics matches up with the eye test, which is coincidentally what Sumer Sport does. Well, we were able to reconnect at the Combine. And so I want to play just a little bit of my conversation with her, with you, so that you can kind of get a feel for where things are going, if you will. Because I truly believe that this marriage that is happening is going to provide a better evaluation with incorporating the best of both worlds, really. So let me just go ahead and pull this up for you guys so that you can, in fact, just a basic conversation of what we were talking about.
Adaptability, that might actually be easier for us to gauge whether or not they can do it at the NFL in a way that we never knew before if you just played in one system. And then it's always hard to transfer college to NFL because the talent level is so different. Right. And there's such a wide disparity of talent on the field.
The game speeds up for some players, whereas in others it does slow down. And it's a question of, like you said, is a player, particularly we're talking about quarterbacks now, are they able to adapt to this new style? Because let's face it, when you are coming in as a top draft pick, I'll say round one, even into the top half of round two, if you are a quarterback chosen, there's an expectation of you to basically come in, learn the playbook, hit the ground running.
Yeah.
The players, the organization, the owners are investing into your success. They want to see a turnaround. They either went up or are in this high draft position because they feel that the person they choose is going to be the one to help re-establish this team as a powerhouse, whether it be just in the division, in the conference, or in the league as a whole. So having that adaptability, having that flexibility, but also having the mental capacity to be able to make those adjustments. So I'm excited to see what Sumer Sports does with this data once you are able to collect it.
Yeah, once you have enough of a sample size that you can kind of figure that out. And I also think it's one of the big components of this year's draft that we just don't know the answer to yet. We're still in a period of time where we certainly have a lot of advanced numbers about all of these different prospects at the quarterback position also. But when you hear, and this is definitely a year, we're not hearing people that are just super enamored with the class. Right. I am hearing, and I will say one of my takeaways from this week is I am hearing more and more of that about Cam Ward. I am hearing people that are excited about Cam Ward, and I'm more I'm leaving Indianapolis thinking that I'm more optimistic that he will have the ability to have success. Watching the tape are telling consistently us that it matches what the numbers say.
All right.
And
I mean, so there you have it. Just getting a little bit more insight into how Sumer Sports is taking top names applying what they've seen, the eye test as we always call it, and also talking about the analytics from the field, merging them two together to kind of determine what is going to happen. Not necessarily giving you all of the information, but giving you enough to have you really begin to think, have you really begin to understand the breakdown of an athlete's ability and how they are able to perform. And basically, in the end, once you have all of this data, confirm where you feel is going to be the best fit for the team. I'm going to take a real quick break. When I come back, though, I do want to talk more about the athletes that I saw at the 2025 National Scouting Combine. Be back in just a moment.
Tens of millions of tickets.
Tens of millions of tickets.
Tens of millions of tickets.
Thank you, VetTix. Thank you.
Thank you, First Ticks.
Thank you, VetTix and First Ticks.
Thanks to your support, the nonprofits VetTix and First Ticks have given away tens of millions of tickets and counting to vets currently serving military, the immediate family of troops killed in action, and our brave, current, and former first responders. These tickets are a meaningful way to say thank you to America's heroes and help them re-engage with American life by giving them free, fun experiences and new happy memories that'll last a lifetime. And now, we want you to be part of the mission. Got extra tickets to concerts, games, or special events? Or want to see if you qualify? We want you to go to vettix.org and firsttix.org today. Give something to those who gave.
Welcome back to the Sports Reading Man, Eric Wilson. Again, talking about the 2025 NFL Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, Indiana. Let's get to Friday. Friday, a lot of good DBs who showed up. We also had some of the tight ends who were there. Again, names that I just want to bring to everybody's attention because I feel, number one, they elevated themselves by what they did on that field. And more importantly, number two, what I saw was just very well determined, well poised, and a true balance of being able to take the coaching of knowledge, whether it be from a new coach or someone who they might have been familiar with, number one. And number two, going out there and believing in themselves. And as a lot of them did say to me, not making the moment bigger than what it truly was. So a couple names from the DB squad who was there on Friday. Kobe Bryant from Kansas, 4.53 40. The backpedal and break 45 route that they ran. This young man looked excellent in that. Another name, Darian Porter out of Iowa State, 4.39. He had a 36 vertical jump, and his broad jump was 10 feet 11 inches. So again, having one of the better drafts, but the thing about him was his fluidity and also the fact that he remained consistent throughout. A name that I do want you to pay attention to is Quincy Riley out of Louisville, 4.49. When I tell you from the gauntlet to the line drill to the backpedal drills, this young man out of Louisville, Quincy Riley, truly put on a show. As the day progressed, he continually looked better and better and better. Another name, and this is the big one, and when I have my guest on here in about 15 minutes, I'm going to ask him about Max Hairston from Kentucky, 4.29 40. And another gentleman who in all the drills looked exceptional, 39.5-inch vert, 10.9 in the broad jump. But Max Hairston cemented, in my opinion, himself as a solid day 2 prospect. Not sure about day 1 yet. I do believe that there is a place for him at the DB position. I'm just not sure which team right now, outside of the top teams that we know need pretty much everything, are going to look at him and feel like he is a fit. But guaranteed, Max Hairston, if he goes in the first round, I will not be surprised. I do expect to hear his name sometime maybe in the late 20s of Thursday night or the early 30s to beginning of the 40s on Friday. When you flip it over to the tight end spot, there were two names that stuck out to me. One, Terrence Ferguson out of Oregon, 4.63 40, and Joshua Simon out of South Carolina with a 4.66 40. Again, what they did in regards to the drills put themselves, in my opinion, head and shoulders above the rest of their contemporaries at the NFL scouting combine. If I had to take two, one from the DB side and then one from the tight end side, like I said, Max Hairston is definitely the guy. I think Joshua Simon from South Carolina, I would give him a slight edge over Terrence Ferguson, but truly not by much. I feel either one of these gentlemen, no matter which team picks them up, are going to be names that in about 2 years, depending on which team they're at, their names are going to be names that we are going to be talking about based on the impact that they give their team. And it's always that question of when you take a high draft pick, is the individual that you're bringing in going to have an immediate impact? Because that's what you want. You need this individual to come in and basically help put this team back on the map. Maybe not necessarily a leader in the locker room because you are a rookie, but a difference maker and someone who is going to come in, know the playbook, know the system, and be ready to each and every week go out there and show us, essentially, why you were taken so high in the draft. I'm going to take another break. When I come back, I'm going to get to the day full of notes, people. Let me tell you. The quarterbacks, the running backs, and the wideouts. The 2025 NFL Scouting Combine. Stay tuned. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Your man, Eric Wilson, for the Sports Arena. Yes, on a Monday night, talking about the 2025 NFL Scouting Combine. Before I continue on and talk about day 3, which was the quarterbacks, the running backs, and the wide receivers, can I talk to you about what I'm sure by now the world knows? And that is the fact that while I'm sitting in Lucas Oil and watching on Saturday, we find out from NFL analyst, commentator, journalist Ian Rappaport, Rap Sheet drops the news that Deebo Samuel is going from San Francisco to the Washington Commanders. So let me share with y'all, I guess, my fly on the wall moment, if you will. When the news drops, I'm in Lucas Oil, sitting with my people. Shout out to my man Mookie Hawkins. Shout out to my man, Cortland Griffin. We're sitting there, we're having a conversation, and the news breaks of this happening. So anybody who's ever been to Lucas Oil knows that, like most NFL stadiums, they have suites, skyboxes. Call them whatever you want to call them. Well, each team is labeled where the scouts, GMs, head coaches are all watching the athletes on the field. There was a gentleman about 3 seats down from where I was, and he had a pair of binoculars. Let me tell you, this is where my nosiness got me. I mean, truly, I won't say it got me into trouble, but I was just like, I got to see this. So I borrowed the man's binoculars. I look up. The skybox where the Washington Commanders was, I think there was maybe 2 people in there at the time. I look about 3 down to my right, and there's the 49ers. And it's just one of those where I see people in there, and some are coming in, some are leaving. I'm like, this deal just went down as we're all sitting here watching the 2025 National Scouting Combine. That is how quickly things get done in Indy. Now, of course, nothing is official until the start of free agency. But the fact that coaches and GMs basically left one skybox, went into another, or met in the hallway, had a conversation, and was like, let's get this done. It just blew my mind to be able to see it, not necessarily up close and personal, but to know that it took place in the same building that I was in. That to me was just one of those moments where I got an inside look into how things are done, but also how simple and quickly things can get done when everybody's together. Now, listen, as we know, free agency doesn't start for another, I think, 8-9 days. But the fact that conversations were happening is just another reason why I'm like, okay, I can't miss the combine anymore. For the simple fact that we know, okay, we're going to be looking, wait, where's this coach going? Where's this general manager going? What deal is going to be done? And once free agency starts, as we all know, it is going to be one of those things where questions are going to get answered. But again, when you're looking at the talent as these coaches and GMs are and scouts are, that's when they really begin to assess, will this athlete over here get us to where we're trying to go? And if so, how much cap room do we have? What are we willing to offer? What are they willing to take? And who's going to be the individual that gets traded? To keep it just that simple, really, for me, I was like, I thought it was more complex. I really did. You gotta set dates and have dinners and make fun. No, we're just gonna walk out of our skybox, knock on the door of the other guy, and say, "Hey, do you have an interest? Yes. Okay. Let's make this happen right here, right now." And it was just amazing to see it all unfold in the blink of an eye. In about 5 minutes, I got my man coming here. He does a podcast, the injury podcast. My man Brian is going to be joining me here in about 5 minutes. And let me take a break. I'm going to give you a little background, and then I'll be right back to talk to you about Brian. Stay tuned.
Hi, my name is Tim Rose. I'm the president and COO of Dolphin Key Worldwide Transportation. Welcome to our new 25,000 square foot facility located in Miami, Florida. For over 25 years, Dolphin Key Transportation has been the choice for discerning travelers who use our services on the East Coast of Florida as well as the West Coast of Florida, and we look forward to servicing you.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. 2025 NFL Scouting Combine. Your man Eric Wilson for the Sports Arena. So the man who I am blessed to be talking to tonight, I had the privilege of meeting him in Indianapolis. Brian Scott, he has his show. He is the podcast host and creator of the Sports Podcast Network, but his show is called The Injured List. And what Brian talks about is not only the sustained injury that a player may face, but also if they are a college athlete, what's that mean for their stock with regard to the draft? Now, we were going back and forth with a couple names, and I'm glad he took time to join me tonight here. And as I say his name, I guess I said it like Beetlejuice 3 times. 1, 2, 3. My man, Brian, is in the building. What's up, brother? How are you?
Eric, how you doing? Nice to see you again.
Great to see you, brother. I'm glad to see that you are back safe.
Likewise.
I did forget that you are a Giants fan. So let me just say thank you for Saquon really quick. All my Giants fans, I got to say that to them. So, you know.
Well, it's our pleasure. As it turns out, it's our pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Brian, again, your podcast, The Injured List, you do a very unique take with your show with regard to not only the NFL players, but with regard to, and we'll take just this weekend of us being together with the Combine, because there are certain players, and some that I want to get into with you about, they were unable to attend the Combine for injury reasons, but some actually did that were on your list. Now, I had spoke about this man earlier, Maxwell Hairston from Kentucky. I talked about him. Yep. You had him on your list, but he showed up in a big way. So talk to me about what you saw from his injury to what we saw at the NFL Combine.
Well, let me start by pointing out that the Combine is huge for a guy like me. Doing what I do, the Combine is like the Super Bowl, okay? Because it's a chance for all the organizations to actually meet in person with these players whom they may not have had the opportunity to sometimes see play at all in person. But it also has a chance for them to do medical screenings and exams and review all of their medical histories. And this historically was what the Combine originally began as before it became this big hoopla televised with all these skill competition things that go on now. So even up until this day, the Combine remains a very important medical assessment of all these players entering the draft. And so for a guy like me to be able to attend the Combine is huge. And after the Combine and while I was there, I gathered a tremendous amount of extra information on all of the players on my list. So some of the stuff you're hearing here that I'm breaking down is actually the first time I'm going over this. And this, I haven't even put out my draft special yet. So this is all going to be on there too. So if you miss it here, don't worry, it'll be out there again. But in regards to Maxwell Hairston, he missed about 7 games this past season because of an undisclosed shoulder injury. Now, it's really hard sometimes to find precise information about what exactly the problem was. Now, the fact that he actually showed out at the Combine is not surprising because obviously it wasn't a lower extremity injury. So a lot of the things that they're doing at the Combine don't require as much upper body skills. But it shows me that he probably has fully recovered from whatever this injury was that he was dealing with. I mean, he clocked some impressive 40 time at 4.28, and he was up in the upper tier for his standing vertical jump and broad jump. So the guy showed why he is a very highly sought after corner. You know, he's considered lean, athletic, and a speed guy with fluid movements and great in coverage. So it seems like whatever ailment he was dealing with during the season, he may have overcome it. Now, let's keep in mind that the things they're being asked to do on the football field during the Combine are much different than what they're asked to do on game day. So yes, you can only kind of get a glimpse into how well they are doing right now and how well they have recovered. This doesn't necessarily erase all of the things that happened in the past. Now, I'm assuming that his medical screening went very well. I did not hear any negative things about it. So my guess is with him that whatever he was dealing with, he's probably fully recovered, and this should not affect his draft stock at all.
All right. Fair enough. So another gentleman who I'd like to talk to you about, one that I am pretty sure, because I was going over my list and I was like, wait a minute, I thought this guy was actually there. And I believe it was, let me just see if I can find him again. And please correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
But the Georgia defensive end. And that was this guy.
Oh, Mikael Williams. Yes. Yes. Now,
Go ahead.
yeah, so, even though these guys are injured or coming off an injury or maybe haven't been cleared yet, they will be present at the combine because this is still the time that the teams take to interview these guys. They have to come do their psychological testing and all these other things that they have at the combine for them, aside from the physical stuff. And it still isn't the ability for the organizations and players to meet face-to-face and for them to kind of read into their knowledge of the game, how they read pass protections, et cetera, et cetera. So Mikael Williams was present. He did not participate, though, in any of the physical skills, but stated that he will be ready to perform all of his stuff at his pro day. He was dealing with a pretty significant ankle sprain throughout much of the season after injuring it in the season opener. And while he was at the combine, he was quoted as saying that he was only playing at about 60% on that ankle, essentially the entire season. In fact, so much so he was injured during the year that he didn't even practice leading up to the Sugar Bowl, where I think he actually re-aggravated it. So that ankle was never fully healthy. It sounds like he is a very highly sought after defensive end. And if he's able to get through this offseason and perform at his pro day, that could set aside any reservations these teams have about drafting him. He's a big physical guy with rare physical traits. So the fact that he suffered this injury in the opening game of the season probably didn't really allow him to show what he really could do when fully healthy. So hopefully he's over this and there's no lingering issues here. But that was some big news coming out of the combine for me when I heard that he was there and I watched his interviews.
Okay. So a couple more names that you gave to me, and thank you so much. I want to talk about the cornerback from Notre Dame, Benjamin Morrison. What about him? Because as we know, Notre Dame, this year especially, hungry team, dominant team, all up until the, of course, national championship game. But what about him? And where do you think his stock is going to either rise or fall with regards to the draft?
Well, one thing I learned about this young man during the combine was that he's very well put together. And I'm not just talking physically from a physical standpoint. He checks all the boxes mentally. He's very well spoken. He seems like a very good individual from the morality standpoint. He doesn't get into trouble. He's very well educated. He speaks very well. He was great in all of his press conferences. Unfortunately, during the year, he sustained a season-ending hip injury back in October, which did require surgery. And what he did was he tore the labrum, which is essentially the ring of cartilage that surrounds the hip joint and helps provide stability. And this is not a very common injury in football. We do see this a lot in soccer players and in ice hockey players. However, it can happen in any sport. The issue was that this surgery is a very difficult surgery to perform for even the most seasoned orthopedic surgeon. It really takes a specialist who basically focuses on hip injuries and does a lot of these throughout the year. And those orthopedic surgeons are hard to come by. So what he did was he ended up having surgery in Vail, Colorado at the Stedman's Hawkins Clinic, which is a very prestigious orthopedic institution located in Vail. And they also have offices in Denver. But his surgeon, Dr. Philippon, is one of the most renowned surgeons for this particular problem who does this particular surgery to repair it. So he had surgery by one of the best. And according to Benjamin during the combine, he's on schedule. Things are going well. He's about 4.5 months now out from the surgery. He didn't want to push it at the combine, even though he was cleared. He wanted to give himself more time and is going to actually showcase his skills at a private showcase, which has yet to be determined the date. So Now, this is a tough injury to bounce back from, especially when you're talking about those sports, like I mentioned earlier, soccer and hockey. With football, I think he should be fine. Now, this might, though, affect his draft stock a little bit, and it really depends on what the teams saw or reviewed during the medical screening portion of the combine. Since they weren't able to see him do anything physical, what really comes down to is whether the teams felt comfortable with reviewing his medical records and in their exams of him while he was there. And apparently he made several trips to the hospital for exams by multiple teams while he was there. He mentioned that in one of his interviews as well. So very interesting to hear that. That's the kind of information I look for when I listen to these interviews and I go to the combine. So I was glad to pick up some of that extra info that really put a light on everything for me. I do think this might bump him down a little bit than what we may have seen him if he was coming in fully healthy.
So if he came in fully healthy, where do you believe he would fall? And then given his current status, do you think he will be part of the day 3, rounds 4 through 7, or will he be the guy that is given the call after?
Well, most of the guys I pulled off this list initially were top 50. So, they were probably going to go within the first 3 rounds anyway, or, maybe at least round 2. Right. And then again, this all comes down to need. I think this does bump him down the cornerback list, however, because this is a pretty deep cornerback draft. So this might bump him down a lot further than what he would have been coming in healthy. He might, be out of the top 10 cornerbacks in the draft this year just because it's such a deep field. But I don't think he'll be undrafted. He just might get bumped down a round or 2.
Okay. So I have to ask you about this guy, Brian, because, I'm a Penn State guy. Kevin Winston.
Yeah.
I got to ask you about him. How do you feel he will fare in this year's upcoming draft?
This is another guy that I really was impressed with at the combine with his interviews and stuff. So aside from the physical capabilities, it sounds like the psychological, mental aspect of him is well packaged too. He had a week 2 injury during a practice session, and initially they thought it was nothing serious. He actually thought he just tweaked his knee, quote unquote.
Right.
And then tried to play the following week, but didn't feel right. So removed himself from the game. Probably the smartest thing you can do as an athlete. If you're not feeling right and you feel like something's off, just get out, get it examined. And it turns out that he had a partial ACL tear of the ligament in his knee. Now, unfortunately, when that happens, it's almost inevitable that you're going to need reconstructive surgery. And rather than wait, they made the smart move of pulling the trigger and getting it addressed very quickly. So basically, that puts him at a great timeline to be ready for training camp. Now, they said he might have been cleared before pre-draft drills in early March. It sounds like he's not going to push it. However, he was quoted as saying that he is hoping to at least run the 40 during the Penn State Pro Day on March 28th. So that's definitely something to look forward to see how he does with that. He said he's not quite at 100% just yet, even though he has been cleared. He doesn't quite feel like he's ready. And most guys will be cleared. Most surgeons will clear their guys when they're at about 85% of what they're looking for on some, objective measurements, which a lot of that stuff they do at the combine, by the way. They do a lot of objective testing to see where these guys are at. So if he, hit at least above that 85% mark, they know he's kind of getting close. Anytime you're coming off an ACL injury, unfortunately, you got to look at everything that happened inside that knee. Hopefully for him, it was just an isolated partial ACL. If that's the case, and there was no other major structural damage, which is what we look for with torn ACLs, then that's the ideal path for recovery and being able to make a full recovery and without any long-term concerns. So hopefully that's the case with Kevin Winston. And if that is, then it shouldn't really affect his draft stock too much.
All right. I got one more for you. And Brian, thank you so much, man. I definitely want to keep this conversation going, both now and in the future. But I got to ask you about this guy here, Oklahoma State's Nick Martin. Talk to me about him.
Yeah. So, he actually did perform at the combine and did very well, despite some injury concerns during the year with a knee injury. And again, this was one of the ones where I had a hard time finding a lot of information out there in the media that would indicate exactly what his knee injury was. Now, again, the teams at the combine have this information in their hands. They're able to review everything, so they know the specifics. And as long as they didn't see anything concerning on there, sounded like he did well at the combine. This could lay to rest any concerns that teams might have picking him up at what they slotted him in before the injury. So it sounds like things are definitely in his favor at this point.
Okay. All right. Brian, thank you so much for joining me here tonight on the Sports Arena, man. It was great to meet you in Indy. If you would do me a favor, I'm going to give you the full screen. Hey, promote you, promote your show. Let people know where they can find you.
Well, again, Eric, thank you so much for having me on. Indy was amazing. I had a great time as well. I was glad to meet you there through some mutual contacts of ours. And I do my podcast, The Injured List, on that sports podcast network, and you can find us on all the major podcast platforms. You can check out my website, theinjuredlist.com, for all the old episodes I've done, along with some blogs I've written in the past. And you can contact me on there, theinjuredlist.com. You can follow me on X at Injured List Pod, or on Instagram, the Injured List Podcast, and on Facebook at the same name as well. And we usually try to put out at least a monthly episode throughout the year. Sometimes it's a little bit more frequent during the NFL season, a little bit less frequent during the off season. And I cover all sports too, not just the NFL, although that is my priority, as I do a lot of fantasy football injury updates throughout the NFL season as well. So check it out. Can't go wrong when you have extra information, right?
Yeah, exactly. Definitely, I'll be calling you to pick your brain as the next NFL season comes up. I got to ask you this question before I let you ride out of here. Currently, your Giants have the number 3 pick in the draft. Who do you want? And 2, who do you think you're going to get?
Well, there's been so many rumors thrown around, even while we were in Indy. Things every day, it felt like something new was being thrown out there about what the Giants were going to do. The last rumor I heard was that they possibly might try to trade up and go for Travis Hunter, thinking he might go number 2. That would not be a bad thing. However, we have a major hole to address at quarterback, which means they're going to have to do something like signing Aaron Rodgers potentially, or one of the other guys that's kind of floating around in free agency out there. I'm not really stoked about that possibility. I'm kind of hoping they do a rebuild, or at least get a young guy in here that can show some, readiness and step in right away. I did hope initially, before all these rumors came out, that Cam Ward might fall to them, and if so, they should snatch him up. I think he has a little bit of a bigger ceiling than Shedeur Sanders, even though I like both. And then the guy from Ole Miss, who kind of reminds me a little bit of Eli, not just because he went to Ole Miss, but he just has the similar kind of build and mechanics. He looked really good at the combine. I watched him throw, and he's got a good head on his shoulders and has rocketed up a lot of guys' draft boards too. I would not be disappointed if the Giants even traded down and maybe got him. We'll have to see. They have a lot of needs, but quarterback obviously is the big one.
Ole Miss, was that hold on a second. That wasn't.
It was Dart.
Jackson Dart,
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The guy who they are saying he has a style that is comparison to the current Super Bowl champion MVP, Jalen Hurts. So I was like, okay. I was actually thinking maybe, call me crazy, but the kid from Memphis, Seth Hennigan. Okay. I think he might be somebody that if the Giants wanted to do something bold, take someone who was underrated, but someone who definitely looked like he was ready to go. I think he might be that guy. I don't know. But Jackson Dart definitely, if he goes to the Giants, listen, unbiasedly, I'm like, hey, good for him. As long as you build around him, the Giants, can be a team, but let's see what happens. I really feel like, though, someone to complement Malik Neighbors, I think is something, in my opinion, I just think you guys maybe should try to attack first and then maybe try and find you, whether it be Sam Darnold, whether it be Aaron Rodgers, whether it be some of these other quarterbacks who are out there, whether they be in the draft or whether they be in free agency. But again, like I agree with you, build and then see what happens from there.
Yeah. Well, the unfortunate thing is at the 3rd pick, if the Giants don't get it right, we'll never hear the end of it after they picked Daniel Jones up at number 6 that year. So they've got to get it right.
Agreed. Ladies and gentlemen, my man Brian, the Injured List podcast, you heard from him, man. Make sure you check him out on all his socials. Brian, it was a blessing. Thank you so much. And my brother, I will definitely speak to you soon.
All right, Eric. Thank you very much. A pleasure being on.
Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for your man, Eric Wilson, here for the Sports Arena. Again, big shout out to my guest, Brian, for being on the show tonight, talking the NFL Scouting Combine, just giving us a recap of it. I will definitely be seeing y'all next week. Free agency is soon to be upon us. Let's see what happens. Everybody stay blessed, and I will talk to you.